Okay, I'm Kevin Sutter, and from an IBM perspective, I've been in charge of the programming models for WebSphere for several years. So Java EE, MicroProfile, and now Jakarta EE. I'm very involved in the open source environment, so I'm a project lead of MicroProfile, and of course I help the development of the components there. I'm also on the PMC for Jakarta EE. I'm on the steering committee, I'm on the spec committee, and the platform project. And so I'm quite involved with all of the programming models and try to continue to promote them both outside of IBM and within IBM. I do have to point out, I put together this little icon up here, with the book because I just thought it was kind of funny to kind of tie in. I've had people go out and try and find this book. That does not exist. That's not a real book. So forget about going out to Amazon or anything to find it. But I just thought I'd point that out to people. Okay, so I'm going to do a very brief history. I see some familiar faces. I know that many of you probably already know what Jakarta EE is, but I got to give a little bit of history to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page. Then I'm going to talk about our process of what we did for Jakarta EE8 and getting all of the specifications, APIs, and TCKs available. And then talk about our compatible implementations. And if you were just at the keynote, Mike talked about the compatible implementations for Jakarta EE8. And then the controversial topic of what's next and what's beyond Jakarta EE8 and what else are we doing. This is a chart that we used back Java 1 2015. A DE from IBM, Ian Robinson, he's been here before at the conference. And he was asked to talk about Java EE and what is the state of that. Now, this is, if you think back on 2015, Java EE7 was well entrenched. Java EE8 hadn't been released yet, but it was close, but it kept kind of going back and forth as far as how big it was going to be, and then it shrunk and stuff. So Ian put up this chart just to get the conversation going. Is it still relevant, or is it just an old elephant and we should get rid of it? The thing that's interesting here, this is 2015. This caused us as an industry to start thinking, start talking about this a little bit more because the industry was changing. Agile was coming on, DevOps, microservices. How are you going to develop microservices with Java EE? So a few of us from the industry, it was IBM, Red Hat, Tommy Tribe, a few individuals. We got together and, let me back up first. I forgot about this one. After we did the presentation in 2015, we started to notice that, this shift with Java EE8, we didn't know what the real direction was. Then we were hearing rumors about some of the project leads from Java EE8 components and projects that they were getting moved off to other things within Oracle. And so the whole industry was kind of ignoring this rumbling, this change in position and change in direction. But that's where should have led into the group of us that started talking about what can we do with enterprise Java for the microservices development. And this is where we came up with the idea of microprofile. Now, I know this is a Jakarta EE talk, but I got to give you a little bit of background here on microprofile because this really did kind of kick off this move. We got together and decided we needed a subset of functionality that was subset of Java EE that was applicable to microservices development. And we defined three pieces. It was CDI, JAX-RS, and JSON-P. And we said those three pieces of Java EE, that's like the basis of any microservice. And so if we took that subset and we called it microprofile 1.0, and that's what we did in 2016, microprofile 1.0, and then we have expanded it. So if you look at all of these here, we've got 8 new components that we've defined within microprofile, multiple versions of them. And so in a short 3 years time, if you think, that Java 1, 2000, or Code 1 now, Code 1 2019 was just a couple weeks ago. In 3 years' time, we have 10 or 11 platform releases of microprofile and over 25 releases of all these different components. So it's a tremendously fast iterative development of these different components and getting them out into the open for developers, customers, application servers, all of them to develop and promote. That move that we did for microprofile, that kind of woke up Oracle. And Oracle said, wow, I mean, they're making some noise here. And they, these are just basically a small group of people that got together and started to push this a little bit. And it was getting a lot of attention. And Oracle ended up coming to same key vendors, the IBM, Red Hat, Tommy Tribe, and said, maybe we should be moving Java EE to an open source environment. I mean, we've been wanting that for a long time. IBM, Red Hat, we've all been talking to Oracle for a long time to get it into a true open source model. And for them to suggest this, we accepted it with open arms. So now, at the Eclipse Foundation, we have both microprofile and Jakarta EE as the premier open source programming models for developing microservices in an enterprise Java environment. I'm putting this up a little early, but I just want to give the idea out here. There's a very simple website, Jakarta.EE. That will bring you to this site right here, and from here you can get to anything related to Jakarta EE. You can get to our projects, compatible implementations, the specifications, everything is right from this site. So, Jakarta EE8, we had to define a whole new set of processes. This is a chart that we've used here a couple of times. I actually got this from someone at the Eclipse Foundation. They had put it together. I've used it. Other companies, other presentations have used it. But I really like this because it kind of compares what was done on the Oracle side with the JCP and what we are doing on the Jakarta side. And it's not just a simple matter of, knighting it and saying, oh, okay, well, we're going to do specifications. There's a lot of work to figure out, okay, how can we legally and from an IP perspective develop these specifications and make them real for all of the vendors and people that are contributing to them. So one of the things that we want to focus on, we want to have code first. Somehow we want to have code to show that things are real before we try to specify them. Classic example on the JCP side, years ago, we did entity beans. I don't know how many of you have used or developed entity beans. That implementation was not portable between different vendors. If you developed entity beans on WebLogic, they would not port easily. They would not port to WebSphere or vice versa. So we want to make sure that we have some type of code available. And maybe it's simultaneous, but it would be even better if it came out before we do the specifications. The old way had a specification lead. That was required because of the IP flow of Oracle. All the IP had to go through a specification lead, and then that would feed back into Oracle. What we have done here instead is we have a very collaborative environment within the Jakarta EE project for developing specifications. We still have to have a project lead. That's just a project lead because projects are within Eclipse, the Eclipse development process. But they do not lead the specification. The specification is developed as a whole by the whole community. The big one is the third one down. Documentation and especially the TCKs were completely closed source. Nobody had access to them unless you had signed a special licensing agreement with Oracle. And now on Jakarta EE, all of it is open source. So You can access the binaries if you wanted to do the testing. If you actually want to look at the test cases, they're all out in Eclipse. So this is a huge bonus, especially for application servers, but also for any of the application developers that are out there, because you may run into situations that you're wondering, am I using the specification correctly? Am I using this API correctly? You could reference the TCKs if you're interested. Compatible implementations. In the past, you've all heard of Glassfish. That was our reference implementation for Java EE. What we are doing now is we're following the model that we use for microprofile, and we have compatible implementations. And the idea there is that you don't have to have a single reference implementation for the whole platform. You could have multiple compatible implementations that represent the whole platform. And that's the idea of the compatible implementations, and I'll be able to demonstrate that in a little bit. And then certification. If you had done the licensing agreement with Oracle to do the TCK testing, all of that, it was like a black box. We would deal with Oracle and we say, hey, we have a problem with this test case, and we kind of throw it over the wall, and we don't know if anybody else, maybe Red Hat already had the same problem. We don't know that. They kept it all secret. So it was always just starting from scratch. And now it's self-certified, it's all in the open, everybody can reference everybody else's TCK results, looking at how they certified, and it's a much more open collaborative environment. I'm not going to go into the detail of the whole specification process. If you want to go to sleep sometime, you can read it. It's quite the involved process in order to get through a specification process that is acceptable to the participants, and it allows for the proper IP flow between the different participants and the vendors, and making sure that everybody is covered. But what I do want to point out are the items here. So when we do a specification, a version of a specification, we have to have a document that defines, written word for the specification. We have to have the APIs, corresponding Javadocs, the TCK, and a compatible implementation that shows that the specification can be implemented and that the TCK properly executes against it. Okay, so that's, in a nutshell, that's what the specification process is identifying. You got to have those 5 things. Okay, so instead of going through charts, I'm going to come out here, and hopefully this will work okay. I mentioned Jakarta EE is a place to go. Specifications. Let's see if this will work. Yeah, okay. So from this site right here, I just want to show you that we now have a one-stop shop for finding all the information related to Jakarta EE. So I'm going to just start here at the top. You can see how each of these kind of, get highlighted as you go down. But I'm going to go to the platform. And of course, we only have one release right now, so it's Jakarta EE8. Now click on that. And here's where we're going to have a one-stop shop. So you come here and you've got access to the PDF version of the specification, freely download. You don't have to sign a licensing agreement or click through or anything. You can just get it. If you want to have a single-page HTML format, you can look at that here. I'll just show you real quick that it actually does, work. It does come up with the whole specification. The Javadoc. So right there, one click, here's all the Javadoc for Java EE8. Now, I know that some of this, Jakarta EE8. I know Java EE8 had a similar type thing, but you had to go and find it. You had to know where to look. So one of our goals was, here's a one-stop shop. So here you can get to any of the components, any of the information related to it. The TCK, now I'm not going to download it, but if I click on this, it'll come up and say, okay, you want to download the TCK. This is a zip file that has all the binaries for the TCK, instructions on how to set it up and execute it, and then how to submit your results. So everything all in one download. This was never available before. Nobody had access to the TCKs. And then, of course, the other thing is the APIs. So this is just a quick access to the APIs that are held in Maven. Each of the components, you can drill down and take a look at each one individually, or you can just come out here and get the whole platform API. Okay, so I think it's better to go over that one live than to go through the charts. So one thing I do have to point out, I pointed out the platform spec. Well, I started at the top because that one and the web profile spec, they're a little special because we got the complete source for all of those, or for the platform and web profile, from Oracle. And those were the only two that we received from Oracle before we released Jakarta EE8. The other two listed there, Bean Validation and CDI, they came from Red Hat, and they freely contributed them, and along with copyrights. The other components within Jakarta EE8, right now we kind of have placeholders for them. We have a skeletal specification, and then we're relying on the Javadoc. And the reason that we did that is because there was more IP and copyright verification that had to be done. If you've been following the mailing lists, we are starting to get those from Oracle and getting them into Eclipse. I think we've got about a dozen of them so far, and there's more that are coming. So eventually, we're going to get pretty much the whole gamut of the specifications. But right now, if you go out to that site and take a look, stick to the web profile and platform specs because those are very complete. The other ones, you have to rely on Javadoc for now. Okay, and we mentioned APIs. If you didn't want to go out and actually look at each one of those individually, you can just go out to your favorite, search engine for Maven, search on a group ID of Jakarta, and you'll find all of them related to Jakarta EE8. Okay, the TCKs, I've kind of mentioned this already. It was selective as to who got access to them. And some companies that really wanted access to the TCKs, for whatever reason, I don't know all the backstory on this, but they couldn't get access to them. One example is Pyara. I don't see the Pyara team in here, but they could not get access to the TCKs. And Pyara is basically taking Glassfish and putting service and support over it with a few additional features. So they could never claim that they were Java EE compliant. You notice on Mike's talk earlier today, they are now Jakarta EE8 compliant because they were able to access the TCKs. I guess that's what I was just talking about. So now they can get access to the TCKs and actually do all of the testing. If you click on any of these folders here, you'll see the TCKs that can be downloaded, and then the corresponding signatures that go along with it. I do like to point this out. There's two versions up there. You'll see one with Eclipse and one with Jakarta. That was kind of a mistake on our part. We were not clear to all the teams producing these as to whether they should be using the Eclipse prefix or the Jakarta prefix. And so we kind of had a mix, and we found that late in the cycle. So we said, okay, let's just double it, duplicate them and double it up for now. So for Jakarta EE8, you can download either one, Eclipse or Jakarta, you get the same zip file. Next release, we'll be cleaning that up. I will point out in yellow here, if you do have a condition where you want to use the Jakarta EE brand or the logo, there are some additional items that you have to do. You have to communicate with the Eclipse Foundation that you're interested in using it, but it's a very simple process. It's not like signing away your life with, with Oracle to get access to the TCKs, but if you want to use the branding, then you have to contact Eclipse. Go back to microprofile again when I'm talking about compatible implementations. We have used this concept with microprofile since day one. So we have even changed the compatible implementations for some of these components. I know microprofile config, we changed implementations between releases as to which one was going to demonstrate compatibility. That's very flexible to be able to do that. That's what we wanted to propose for Jakarta. And it took some discussion, but we eventually got it in place. So when we defined Jakarta EE8, we wanted it to be functionally equivalent to Java EE8. We wanted to make sure that all of the application servers that were currently Java EE8 compliant could easily become Jakarta EE8 compliant. Now, one thing that you'll notice up here, even the warts and wrinkles, there's some bugs with Java EE8. Those we had to bring forward to Jakarta EE8, at least for now, because we needed to make sure that however these application servers pass these tests before, they got to pass the same test without modifying their code. And part of it is because we wanted the same version, or allow, I should put it this way, allow the use of the same version that was Java EE8 compliant. It should be Jakarta EE8 compliant. And so that's what our goal was with this. In order to ask for certification, it's a very open process. We have to create a certification request. So here's a picture of the Open Liberty one. Pyara did one, Wildfly did one. You have to ask for certification. What's your product name? Where's your download? What's your version? Where are your TCK results? That's the other thing. They have to be public. So anybody could go out. You could all go out and look at these. They're all public. And verify that things are working as expected. Anybody could comment on these certification requests. So it's not like it's only a select number of people that get to review and approve it. They're open, and anybody can comment on them if needed. So when Java EE8 was announced, well, it's kind of funny. The only compatible implementation at the time, it was supposed to be the reference implementation called Glassfish. What was interesting is that didn't show up on their website, not for a long time, not until Open Liberty came out and we said that we were Java EE8 compliant, then they said that Glassfish was. But normally, Glassfish as a reference implementation would be the first one posted on their website. Now, what was interesting here, when we announced Jakarta EE8 on September 10th, so just over a month ago, we had 3 implementations all ready to go. Of course, we had Eclipse Glassfish, then we had Open Liberty and Wildfly, and all 3 of them had submitted their certification requests with all the TCK results, and they all got approved on the day of announce. That has never happened before. I mean, even when, IBM or Red Hat or anybody was trying to be Java EE compliant, there is no way that was done on the day of announce. I mean, a lot of times we barely even started our testing by that time, and it would be several months later. But this was on the day of announce. So this was really key for us. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, good. So now, what's next? So we got done with Jakarta EE8. And if you've been following any of the forums or mailing lists, there's a lot of discussion about what's happening next. What's coming down the road for Jakarta EE9 or 10 or 11, going down the road. One of the big items on our plate is that Oracle is not going to allow us to modify anything in the JavaX namespace. So all of the APIs that Java EE and now Jakarta EE, all of them that are in use start with JavaX, javax.persistence, javax.servlet, javax.jm or messaging. No, it's JMS. Any modification to any of those APIs, even a simple enum, maybe there's a new enum value that you want to add to one of the APIs. Oracle says you cannot modify JavaX. We have to move it to a new namespace. That's going to hurt. It's going to hurt everybody. We've got specs, APIs, TCKs, documentation, tools, application servers. All of you have applications that are dependent on JavaX. So there is going to be a large ripple effect for this effort. The next chart here, this is one of the big items that we are trying to address is how should we go about this? You know, people think that, that I don't know if it's the most logical. It could be the most painful, but do the big bang where it just says rip the Band-Aid off and say everybody hurts for some period of time, and change everything from JavaX, all of the packages, change them all to Jakarta, and everybody's going to go through the pain at the same time. Okay, that, to be honest, that's probably getting the most vocal support out on our mailing lists. But at the same time, I'll put it this way, how many of you are going to move to Jakarta EE9 if the only benefit is pain, right? So we got to come out with something that's going to entice you to move to Jakarta EE9. So maybe that's something where we have to look at some of the other components. I know JaxRS, they are very active with trying to come out with their new release. JMS, I know they're looking at improving their specification. JSON-B is another one. So I know those three for sure. There's probably others. So would it make more sense to drop down to this incremental idea and say, okay, let's only take the ones that are really pushing forward with new ideas. And then the incremental approach would, just the specifications that are changing are going to affect you. So let's say JMS gets updated, but you're not using JMS, that's not going to affect you. Then you can wait for that effort or pain until you have applications that have to move to the new namespace. So there's pros and cons to both sides for the big bang versus incremental. We would definitely appreciate any input on that. I've mentioned that we have mailing lists that you can participate on. The other, this is just a reiteration of what I just talked about. But the other thing that I want to point out is through this whole mechanism, and I've talked about microprofile and Jakarta EE, you'll see down the middle here, it's the same set of companies and individuals that are working on both. I mentioned my credentials up front. I work in both environments, microprofile and Jakarta EE. I know the other people from Red Hat and Tommy Tribe. It's the same group of people that are working on both. So we know that we have this disconnect. That's another piece that we're looking at. I've talked about the JavaX to Jakarta change. We also have this relationship between microprofile and Jakarta EE that we need to resolve. I just want to point out that we are well aware that we need to resolve this, and we are trying to figure out a means of that is applicable to both environments. One of the things with microprofile I mentioned up front, how we have spun out many different platform releases and component releases over a 3-year time. Okay, Java EE, if you think about that, they only did a new platform every 3 or 4 years. Now, we got to do better than that with Jakarta, but we can't come out the door with Jakarta EE and think that we're going to be able to match what we do on microprofile. So that's some of the impedance mismatch that we have to figure out between the two two projects. So this is where I was getting to. If you have ideas on this, we are having a town hall tonight here at the conference, so you can participate in person. We find these much more useful. I think it's pretty easy to hide behind an email sometimes. So I think it's very useful if you have ideas on anything related to what I've said about what's coming next. Either the timeline, the cadence, microprofile, the JavaX package rename, any of that. If you can come to our town hall tonight, and we've got a full 2 hours allocated. We don't know if we're going to use all 2 hours, but we'll definitely start at 7:30. I think Mike is kind of leading it. Is that right? Yep. But myself will be there. There'll be other people there as well. So this is where I would really like to get more involvement. Now, if you can't do it because you've got other things that are going on, there's plenty of other ways you can participate on Jakarta EE. I've mentioned the mailing list. You can create issues. You can create PRs. There's if the platform is too big, Maybe there's something that you have an interest in. Maybe you have an interest on JaxRS. Well, you can get ingrained just in that component. You don't have to think about the whole platform. You can just do an individual component. And I don't have them listed on this chart here, but there's similar type mailing lists and forums that you can do for MicroProfile as well, if you're interested in participating there. So that's what I had, and I'm just got a couple of minutes left. Any questions? You have a question? Yeah. Okay. So there's a on the mailing list, there's a member of IBM, BJ Hargrave, that has been posting this experimental tool to help with the migration from JavaX to Jakarta. If you have an interest in this, take a look at that that loop on the email thread and try it out and give us feedback. Excuse me. Like Dan was just saying, we are interested in feedback on that. We need to understand, that I mentioned how it's going to be painful no matter what. We are trying to limit the pain for customers. And so if we can come up with a runtime type solution that will help with this mapping, it's going to be much better for everybody. So does that help? Yep. Thanks, Dan, for the reminder. Anything else? Okay, I am around all week. I'm probably up at the IBM booth once in a while. I have a couple other sessions, but if you, and I recognize some of you from other sessions, so if you've got any comments, whatever, if you want to be more private, just hit me up. I'm open for anything related to Jakarta EE or MicroProfile. Okay, thank you.